Good afternoon. What is a warm, bright and sunny day. It is Wednesday the 26th of April. I'm in the reading up with a nice hot cup of tea and a sturdy box to open. So let's find a knife and get to it. So I'll find my way into this. It's quite securely packaged. Okay, it's going to take some effort, I think, here. So bear with me. Making some progress, and if I could, there we go. Just right. Got the cover off at last. Right, where's the where do I open this box? It must be the other side. There we go. Okay, so finally got it open. And I just want to say, basically, what I've got is there is a dispatch note on the side, and what it does not contain any Skaven. I haven't ordered any Skaven, so I'm going to disappoint you there. What I have ordered is that. So I'm going to open up one of these to find out if it's the right one, because if it's what I think it is, it's sort of it's kind of it's a bit special. I want to get it in the right order. I'm just trying to do this so I don't cut my fingers, because hey, that's the sort of thing I would do. And it's the wrong one. But, so I'll do an unboxing of that next time, because this is the one I need to start with. So eventually, yes, I know it's taking me an awfully long time. What I have got here is Dragonroar, the complete fantasy role-playing game. Okay, includes cassette tape, Side A, Introduction to Rulebook and Components, Side B, Solo Adventure, A Matter of Honour, The True Sound of Adventure, See Over. And this is published by Standard Games and Publications Limited. A British publisher during the late 70s and early 80s, which was better known for a couple of things. Its war games, its terrain pieces. You know, back then there was a big thing about, obviously, miniatures were very popular, and you know, rather than draw the maps out, or you could buy terrain pieces, cardboard terrain pieces, like the Dungeon Planner floor sets from Games Workshop. Standard Games had their own. But they also did things like the trying to think of the man-to-man combat systems, Samurai Blades, Cry Havoc, Siege, which are all quite highly regarded, and partly because essentially it's a man-to-man scale medieval combat in either Japan or Europe, like approximately at the time of the 100 Years' War. So you were doing like skirmishes with them, and they come with really good maps and really good character figure like playing pieces. I mean, essentially they were really well illustrated. Anyway, so a great adventure for the beginner, a challenge for the experienced player. Includes a basic rulebook, party adventure, a Colonth dive, floor plan to represent dragon-infested Colonth dive, Grand Perfection, it represents Evil Wizard's Lair, and A Matter of Honour. Play the tape and choose your route. 24 character monster sheets, full explanation on tape. Full counter encounters, 6 set polyhedral dice, 4 play sheets for easy reference during play. So quite a lot in this box. And then we open up. Also, oh, hold on, I'm thinking perhaps missing out the fundamental thing that everyone remembers Dragonroar for. It's this cover. It's this cover, sort of like, you know, of a hero facing goblins and hero and heroine in the background there, facing off against a war hedgehog. Just say there aren't enough war hedgehogs in role playing. And this is the only role playing game that I think that did them. So we open up, and inside, yeah, being very careful not to drop anything. So what we've got is the cassette tape. Now the cassette tape, don't even know whether this still works, but you can find the recordings of what was on here online. And the thing is, what you would do is you would sit there with the rule book, which I'll get to in a minute, and you would listen to the tape as it took you through the rule book, telling you where to stop, what to start reading, and it guided you through the process of learning to role play the game, and then going on a very short solo adventure, because this is only sort of like, I think it's only about sort of 15, 20 minutes, something on each side, maybe 30 minutes. And this is really came out in 1985, 1986, I'm not quite sure when, but this is the first time you had any real attempt to do any kind of multimedia thing with role-playing, I suspect. I don't think of anything else like this until really with the advent of this CD and the CD-ROM, with TSR doing the First Quest kind of series, because you always or Dragon Strike, I think, with its video cassette tape. Okay, so you had those options, but I think this is the first time it appeared. So I've got a bit of padding, nice little padding in here. These are the character counters you've got in it, and you can see how good the artwork is on these. Really, very good. Which just shows you just what, you know. So rough paper, packing. And then we have the map section. So this is ground floor section A. So you would lay it out bit by bit. So ground floor section B, and you sort of lay it out, or I don't know, sort of like that. Okay. So, and then obviously turn it over as necessary. You enter there, go down the corridor, then you get to section B, and then this is for the solo adventure, A Matter of Honor. You've got several little bundles of those, of fairly innocuous kind of tunnel sections, mini rooms, so on. And these you didn't need to cut these out. They sort of become pre-perforated. You just pull them apart. So multiple sections, and they got bigger and bigger until section J and I, and so you would have, you know, bigger rooms, and they, you know, you'd have sort of like a fairly linear adventure through there. So that's quite amazing. You've got the character sheets, and this has been used, so you can see how, you know, they're quite simple. You've got strength, speed, knowledge, willpower, endurance. Name, gender, male, human, and this would be the warrior sheet. You've got some weapons, some honor points, equipment, and areas of knowledge. So you've got a whole bundle of those. And the other thing is you've got basically boxes on there. You essentially, when you were attacked and took damage, you cross over those boxes until you were healed. And then, for example, here we have the Calonth Dragon, the major beast in part of the adventure, and you can see how many hit points and various locations. And then did the same thing for your goblins and your troll. See whether I can find one. Hobgoblin. Let's just see if I can find. Oh yes, here it is. For your war hedgehog. Oh yeah. Okay, so not only war hedgehog. Do you like saying war hedgehog? it sounds fantastically better in a West country. It's sort of like it's called West Marmoset accent, which I can do because I'm sort of like I'm native to the region. So we also have killer penguins. Look at the size of that beak. You really don't want to have that come up against you, you know, down a dungeon, and even down to snakes and giant spiders. And then we've got a play sheet, and on the play sheet we've got complete fantasy role-playing game, weapon hit probability, concussion table, to modifications hit probability, and so on. So it's a little bit complex, covering some things that you might not necessarily encounter. So everyone's got one of these. Let me see what there's, and then doesn't have any dice, which is a bit disappointing. So you've got the kind of big area where you would encounter the dragon, and somebody's dropped in a included. You've got a bit of that's the other thing. This is a standard games and publications limited. Okay. Squared paper, because back then you wanted square paper to draw your dungeons out on, and so you could buy pads of squared paper. And this is okay. Is it just the one book? It is just the one book, and this is Dragonroar, the basic rules. And so on the back, this is really nicely bright, and it's got a quite a really nice sturdy cover. So replication of the cover from the box, and then on the back what we do have is some images of an advert for standard games, and so we have adverts for the fantasy adventures. That looks fantastic, and also for their medieval miniatures, because they're also a miniatures company, and then a couple of adverts at the bottom there for a couple of their games, Siege and Cry Havoc, which I say very well received, and you can see quite the quality of the product just from that. I mean, they're really nice products. I did have a copy of Samurai. I did have a copy of Samurai Braids and did play it. So, open up. We got the contents page, explanation of the basic rules. And I remember at the time, this. I mean, I did have a copy back then, but it receiving awful press. Describing it as too basic, not enough to it. And they're probably quite right, because essentially there really wasn't anything else for it apart from the other thing, which I'll come on to in another unboxing, which I didn't know existed. So there's a bit of a spoiler alert. But we've got an explanation of the setting and what it's like. So some background. Here's the world. And then we have the arbiter, basically your game master or your referee, oddly described as the fate master in the example of play. And the things you'll notice is sort of like, they are pitching this at a younger audience with these younger players. The fate master, a fair judge, and then a couple of details of some NPCs. And you see the artwork is really very nice in here. And then rules on creating a character. So, essentially warriors, two professions, warriors and wizards. And then we have a rule for specialisms, and you can see how just on there you've got a little bit more to it than you necessarily thought. You take the broad skill, then you specialise down into one of these branches there, and it's doing the same for magic and combat and the humanities skills, field of knowledge monsters, field of knowledge languages, and then you've got basically a broader table, field of knowledge, just how much you know, some examples of play with some odd language there. They basically, player characters sort of countering that. And there's a filled out character sheet. And there are examples here of, honour and how that works in the game. So, it looks to be a well-written rule book. I have to admit, you know, this is not going to be too difficult to understand. Then we've got treasury and goods. And this doesn't really look very different to kind of the layout and style you would later on see, for example, in, say, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, to be fair. Certainly sort of like the later versions of the rule books. And here we have an illustration of those killer penguins. Essentially, you can see how they've shod their beaks with iron or steel, sort of like to protect their beaks and use them as weapons. Got an illustration of movement there, oddly not in colour, rules for encumbrance, and a more closer illustration of movement, sort of like at a more personal scale. Then we get into combat. Oh, see, this is done square by square, and that's not surprising that given that Standard Games was a publisher of war games, so they are, you know, they have experience in this area, especially with things like Siege and Cry Havoc, which is essentially hex to hex, and you could easily take those maps and play out and use those as locations for this if you had them. Those games are very collectible and quite expensive though. So detailed movement, getting into sort of like actual combat, percentage chance to hit. We have a map of the realm. Yeah, fairly sort of, you know, okay, sort of like fantasy realm. You've got islands and seas and mountains and forests and so on. Weapon probability to hit, missile weapons, taking damage, crossing off the hit point locations, crippling, chance of crippling and dead. Dead goblin, he's got all the boxes on his head crossed out. Chances of being concussed because, hey, you know, someone's hitting you over the head with a sword, or and then we have the rules for duels and the code of duello, you know, which is a sort of an odd sort of thing to include. And we get on to magic. Various spells like barrier, pass barrier, calm, enrage. And a lot of these spells are, you know, there's sort of just a duality to the spells. So guess, confuse, or flame, ice. And so there's only sort of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spells. You know, really not very much. Magical treasures. So they've basically really got like a page of spells. Magical treasures is next. Okay, before we get on to monsters, we've got another picture of a war. I've got a couple of pictures of a war hedgehog. And there are your stats for your killer penguin, and also for your war hedgehog. Oh, and also the other thing is the other creature that doesn't get mentioned as much because it's not really illustrated or recognised as the Manelephant. Then we've got notes for the Fate Master only. We've got the Bring It Adventure, the Calanth Dive. It's a bit boring. This is the location. You're supposed to cut this up and put it down. It's not very exciting, I have to admit. Not as exciting as putting down the other locations in that solo map. And I kind of think it would have been nice if the solo map had sort of like had come with some notes and so on for you to actually sort of, I don't know, adapt that. Anyway, so we've got the introduction to the Calanth Dive, which includes the town of Calanth and sort of like some of its buildings that are a little bit oddly laid out. They don't feel particularly natural there, but the illustrations are excellent. It's a bit more to Calanth Drive because essentially, oh, I see. So, and then the background to the dive itself and denizens of the dive. So you've got a list of the monsters, and then what you're supposed to do. Okay, so I'll just get that sheet out. Doesn't want to come out. Come on. Is take this sheet, okay, and follow the instructions in the book, which I'll just show you. So there we are. Cut along those lines, sort of label on the back as those particular locations. And as you go through, lay them down like that. So it's a bit more open than I anticipated. Because again, I've not looked at this in 20 years. Actually, probably not looked at it in 30 years. But I do remember actually having a copy, playing through the solo adventure, and quite enjoying it. It's got a glossary at the back. Yeah, you've got basically all there the credits of the people involved. Yeah, so that's Dragonroar, which I have to think. I think it's an interesting role-playing game. I think it's an interesting attempt to do something interesting with role-playing, and try and pitch it for a younger audience and make it accessible. You know, this is at a time when you had Nathan. I'm trying to see whether. Let's see if there's a date on this. There should be. Does it give one? Doesn't, which is a little odd. But you are talking mid-80s, 86, 85, something like that, maybe 87, when, you know, you have the big popularity of the solo adventure books, and this is kind of a pitched at that kind of level, and a bit more than that. And I think there's quite a lot to be said for this. I think it looks better than I remember. It looks more interesting than I remember, and I think I think it's been unfairly derided in past years. You know, primarily because, you know, of the War Hedgehog. You know, and it's a bit silly, but yeah, I think it's an interesting role-playing game that probably deserves a bit more attention, and is a bit more interesting than people make out. Anyway, that's Dragonroar, published by Standard Games and Publications, you know, back in the 80s, and it says it's suitable for adults and children over 10 years, and yeah, it probably is. It's about that. But I think you could have fun playing it just to try it out. Yeah. Oh, and basically I'm getting a visit from the cat that's not ours. Anyway, thanks for watching another unboxing in the Nook. If you've enjoyed this, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I appreciate you posting those, especially if you've got any memories of Dragonroar. If you, of course, if you want to see me out here again, or be alerted to me being out here again, where you'll see me with a box containing a book, typically containing a book or a game, in this case a boxed game, which I'll unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Unfortunately not by a War Hedgehog, then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. I'll be back again soon with another one, which might actually involve War Hedgehogs. In the meantime, thanks again for watching. Bye for now.